going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Video Podcast. We have an excellent week 6 of football to react to here. But first, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can not just support this show, but become a part of it through the Patreon exclusive Mailbag for the show, where you can guarantee that I read and answer your submissions here at the end of each podcast. You can also get access to my weekly picks via the star level there on Patreon. And beyond that, start gearing up a little bit for draft season. At the MVP level, you'll get the full TFG Draft Insider package with prospect film breakdowns and team-specific 7-round mock drafts over there on Patreon. So lots of good exclusive content. If you want to support the show and get some more TFG in the process, that is going to be the best way to do it. Also, if you're listening to this via the podcast format, not watching over on YouTube, do consider rating and reviewing the show. That also really helps me out. All right, so like I said, big week 6 to react to here. Lots of moving pieces. We're going to go game by game and then get into the mailbag. So we're going to start with the Houston-Tennessee game, and that brings me to a tangent that I need to go on. It has been long awaited. I believe that the current NFL overtime format is the single biggest joke in all of professional sports. Here's why. If you are running a league, a sports league, a professional sports league, which also involves people's livelihoods, people wagering millions of dollars, it is your job to ensure that that sport has the most competitive balance as possible. And I firmly believe that the NFL overtime rules do not allow for that. And here's why. In an NFL game, you have 10, 15 possessions. It's an offensive league. If you deny that at this point, I'm sorry if I offend you, but you're a moron. The league rules are leaning offense, quarterback ratings, yards per completion, points per game. Everything is up. It's an offensive league. There's no denying it. There's a reason teams are hiring offensive coordinators as head coaches and letting their defensive-minded head coaches go. So it's an offensive league. Teams value the ball. They're going for it more on fourth down than we've ever seen by a landslide. The ball, possessions, offense, that is the NFL. If you don't like it, maybe go watch a different sport. That is the reality that we're living in. A team might get 10, 15 possessions in a game, and each one they know the importance of it. And the current NFL overtime rules gift a team a possession based on something as simple as a coin toss, a possession that the other team may not get a chance to equally get that opportunity. And that is a joke. That is an absolute joke that they can't come up with a better option. And I have a better option that I'm going to get to here. That is the equivalent of take Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Heat, Lakers. Let's say it goes to overtime. And they say, all right, we're going to flip a coin. And whoever wins that coin toss, you're going to start with the ball. Note, by the way, that only one time an NFL team has chosen not to start with the ball. And it was like a 13-13 game. Mike Zimmer and his defensive-minded Vikings in a terrible conditions game, knowing that there was not a good chance of the team going down to score a touchdown. One time in all of these overtimes, the team has decided to start on defense. So that tells you right there. Of all the defensive-minded teams out there, with God knows who at quarterback, they're still taking the ball because they know that it gives them the best chance to win. Anyway, back to the basketball analogy. Let's say they flip a coin. And let's say it's LeBron James or Jimmy Butler. Let's say the Heat. Let's say the Heat win the coin toss. They put the ball, they give it to Jimmy Butler. If you score a basket, this game's over. LeBron can't touch the ball. That is what the NFL does. That is what the NFL does, and it is not right, it is not okay, and it needs to change yesterday. So here's the arguments for these rules that are just moronic, and I'm going to debunk all of them. So the most probably reasonable argument is that it's about 50% of these games do not end on an opening drive touchdown, which is great. Good for the team that actually came up with a stop on defense. Well, what about the other 50% of the times that did? What about the last 7 playoff games that went to overtime. 5 of the last 7. The team that won the coin toss went down, scored a touchdown, won the game. The quarterbacks that had to sit and watch as their tired-ass defense gave up these massive touchdown drives, the quarterbacks that had to sit and watch, Aaron Rodgers twice, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, MVP-winning Matt Ryan, 5 of the last 7. They didn't get to touch the football in an offensive league. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. So, yeah, there might be 50% of the times that this doesn't work, but what about the 50% do? That's like saying only 5% of Americans end up getting robbed or murdered. Well, does that just make it okay then? Because it's only 5%? Come on. Process over results here, people. And the results are there in big critical games. The Texans season ended on Sunday because Deshaun Watson didn't get to touch the ball. You saw Deshaun Watson's reaction when they lost that coin toss. He knew it was going to happen. 36-36 that game was. 4 of the last 5 drives ended in a touchdown. And because of a coin toss, the Texans didn't get to touch the football. And their season's over now because of it. So that's one argument, 52% or whatever. But there's other arguments here. And they're way worse. One of them is just make a stop. Come on, just play defense. Get a stop. You can do it. There's 2 sides of the ball. You should have to play defense. How many freaking stops did the Tennessee Titans have to get? How much defense did the Titans have to prove that they can play in this offensive league against the Texans? How many times did opponents against Aaron Rodgers in NFC championships have to prove? Or NFC divisional rounds have to prove that they can stop Aaron Rodgers? How many times did the Patriots have to prove that they can stop Patrick Mahomes in a 38-38 shootout in overtime? Matt Ryan in the Super Bowl that was like 42-42. Yeah, that just make a stop. Yeah, just do it. Just make a stop. If this is a 2-sided sport, why don't both teams have to prove that they can get a stop? Use your brains, people. Use your brains. Terrible argument. Just make a stop. Oh, all the rules lean offense. It's, your defense is exhausted. You've given up 3 touchdowns in the last 4 drives, but, just make a stop. Just make a stop. Yeah. And then the worst one, the worst argument for this is just win in regulation. Are you freaking kidding me? Have you ever taken a philosophy course? Where is the thinking on that? Like I said, competitive balance. There is no logical reason why any team should have an advantage based on a coin toss. It'd be better if they went out and did a, best of 3 field goal kickoff to decide who starts with the ball. Or just make the home team start with the ball so you at least know what to expect. The fact that it's a coin toss that decides these games, it's a freaking joke. That's what it is. The biggest joke in professional sports. So, what do you do? What do you do? Because I can sit here and rant. Well, I've had a solution for this for 3 years, and it's driving me insane that they can't come to this. So I get it. You don't want these games to go on forever. You don't want the stats to get skewed. And honestly, if they just make this change for playoffs, that's fine by me. But the fact that playoff games can end like this is just, it's mind-numbing. So there's things we could tweak so that this doesn't destroy the record books. Hell, just don't count the stats in overtime. I don't really care. It should be more about who wins the game. Add in rules where you have to go for 2. So here's my solution. Similar to college rules, but not college rules, because college, it's a little too crazy. It's a little too exotic. That's not what I'm thinking here. So what you do, you scratch kickoffs and punts. Some people don't like that because they're like, oh, there's 3 sides to football. Well, then why doesn't overtime value both sides of football? You can't say that the rules right now are okay where only one side has to play, and then say that, well, we're going to get rid of punts and say, oh no, special teams. You got to include special teams. Get GTFO on that one. Offense and defense. Kickoffs and punts, you scratch them. And you basically have college rules from there. I'll explain some of the details. The reason you need to do that is because if you just say that the the second team can always answer, right? If the other team scores a touchdown, current rules that the other team can then answer, well, then everyone's going to kick. And then the kicking team has a serious advantage because if you get a stop, you still only need a field goal. So the reason you get rid of kickoffs and punts, both teams start on the 35-yard line, and you both start on the same side of the field, right? So wind conditions doesn't matter. You both start going the same direction. You start on the 35. When you get to fourth down, you have two options. You can go for it, per usual. If you don't get it, the other team takes over and presumably would only need a field goal to win. And the other option is you can punt. And if you punt, no matter where you are, the other team starts exactly where you started. It's an A and B relationship. It's offense versus defense, then it's offense versus defense. And like I said, if you don't want these games to go on forever, you implement a rule where after the first overtime, you got to go for 2. Or you take something from the XFL and say, do a little scoregami. You can go for 1 from the 2, 2 from the 5, 3 from the 10. There's little things you can do here, but it's all better than our current rules. It's all better. So please, NFL, I am begging from the bottom of my heart, for myself and many NFL fans that agree with me, please change these garbage rules that are ruining team seasons. They're ruining playoff games. They're changing guys' livelihoods. These games mean a lot. This isn't baseball where you play 162 games. This isn't baseball and hockey and basketball where there's 7-game series. You get like 12 possessions in football, and your overtime rules gift one to another team where the other team doesn't get that advantage. It is just absurd. So please, NFL, change these rules. And if you're watching this video, please share it. The fact that more broadcasters don't talk about this, more analysts on networks don't talk about how bad these rules are, makes me sick. Because we just sit there and accept that this is okay. We all knew what was going to happen after a freaking coin toss, that the Titans were going to go beat the Texans. And Deshaun Watson knew it too. So please change this garbage. This absolute literal garbage. Get it out of the sport. I am sick of it. So that is the rant. We're going to get back into the podcast. It's going to be a separate video. So if you enjoyed, if you agree, share, like, let's move on and talk some real football and move on from this trash. Okay. I'm glad that's out of the way. Because now we can talk about some football. And I'm going to try to look at this game from a level head because this happens to me every time. Every time a game goes to overtime and it ends on the first possession, Titans fans are like, you're just saying this because you hate the Titans. That's just unfair to me. I mean, anyone that's listened to me, followed me on Twitter, you know how I've felt about these overtime rules for a long time. It's just awful. But let's talk about the football game now. So on the Houston side, it's a shame because they came out and they won last week with the first week with their, ding dong, the witch is dead mentality. Bill O'Brien is gone. Romeo Crennel comes in. They're actually playing much better. Their defense is playing better. Their offense has much more unity and identity. They're just a much more well-coached, well-prepared team. So Watson was great in this game. Amazing comeback. They fell down early. It was like 21-0. So it's just a shame that they lost this game because I think that they were really trying to do something special here and it got derailed here. Now, there was, you can't just say they only lost because of overtime. They're, sure, they could have played defense. Their defense is not particularly good. We know this. There was a big debacle, however, about the 2-point conversion attempt because the announcer in this game was like losing his mind like I just did on that overtime rant. He was losing his mind, like holding out a play card. It was like screaming into the mic, like, this card says you kick it. This card says you kick it. This card says you kick it. He said like 8 times. And if I'm the Texans, I'm going for it. I mean, we know how bad their defense is. We know how bad their defense is. You think they would have stopped Derrick Henry on a 2-point conversion? I don't. I get it. You have Deshaun Watson. I'd rather put the ball in the hands of your offense to put that game away. And the scenario here is they score a touchdown. at the end of the game, and they could kick it and go by 8 or go for 2 and go up by 2 scores, go up by 9 and end the game, and they elected to end the game. I agreed with the decision, and I'm pretty sure it was almost completed. I kind of was tuning out because I was so distracted by the announcer. I think they almost completed it to Randall Cobb. I don't know if he dropped it or what happened there, but yeah, I agree with the decision. I really didn't understand the uproar by the announcer acting like it's 1990. Like I said, it's an offensive league, and it just goes to show you more proof about that if you want to talk about overtime. So a huge loss for the Texans. It just, they played their ass off, and now they got to go play the Green Bay Packers, and I think they will put up a fight. They're gonna have a hard match with, Aaron Rodgers going to be playing pissed off. Their season's probably done, however, and my biggest takeaway here is that Deshaun Watson is going to be a major appeal to whoever the head coach candidate is here, because he truly is outstanding. He's been great for the last couple weeks since Bill O'Brien was let go here. So it's going to be a fun rebuild to monitor here. I think they're probably a year, they could very well be a playoff team in year one with a new coach, but their expectations are going to be Super Bowl, and I do think if they do things the right way, Watson can continue to develop and get up there to be similar to some of these elite quarterbacks, because he really is spectacular. He's got his flaws. He's not the quickest with the ball. He's not going to distribute it quick and early. He likes to run around and make plays. But he can throw the ball accurately downfield. He extends plays. He's just fantastic. As for the Titans, great win. Their offense has been awesome. Their defense is about as good as you can ask from a team in a COVID season where you don't have that crowd to get behind. They're just a really good, solid football team, and offensively they're really, really good. I struggle with this Titans team because you watch the first half of that game, and I'm sitting there like, man, I'm gonna have to apologize about Ryan Tannehill really soon, because he played in that first half like an elite quarterback. Frankly, like, he was decisive, accurate. You couldn't get your hands on him. And then in the second half, he pretty much disappeared through a bad pick, sack, fumble, and all of a sudden the hype fell off rather quickly. I think he's playing like a top 10 quarterback this season. It's just, you can see I'm stumbling with things to say here because I know they're a good football team. There's no denying that. I just had him 7th in my power rankings. Do I trust Ryan Tannehill to win a Super Bowl? No, not really. I don't know, man. I like a lot of the things I see from him, but then as soon as I'm ready to jump on, he kind of lays an egg. I don't know. Titans fans are so mad at me right now. They might not even be listening to this podcast. They're going to play the Steelers this week. If they beat the Steelers, I'll be closer. And if Tannehill's great against that Steelers defense, I'll be closer. But I don't know. At the same time, they probably should have lost this game to the Texans. All right. I'm sorry that wasn't my best analysis of the Titans and the Texans. I'm not ready to jump in on the Titans yet. Because Titans fans, like, out the wall. There's people in my power rankings saying the Titans need to be a top 3 team right now. I'm not there. I don't think they're an elite offense. It's a really, really good offense. And defensively, they're solid, but, Anyway, let's move on. Jets, Dolphins. I moved this up the pecking order here because we get to talk about Tua, who I'm happy I waited to record this because Tua was just named the starter, which is huge. And I'm not going to talk about the Jets. I'm done with the Jets. Kick them out of here. I was getting to this point over the last 2 weeks where I was saying I'm pretty much ready for Tua, and I think the Dolphins are too. So you have definitely good playmakers. You have Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, Jakeem Grant can play. The running game with, Breida is there, but you also have Gaskin. They got some playmakers there. Even Adam Shaheen is blocking his ass off. Now, the offensive line has certainly been better this year, which you needed to see. I will say I'm still hesitant on the offensive line thing. I was really critical of the players they drafted. They took Austin Jackson, who has not been playing, who was kind of a raw guy with upside. They took Robert Hunt, to play tackle, who I thought was better off converting to guard because he's more of a clunky guy, stiff feet. Did not have a good game this week, did not have a good game last week. And then they have Saul McKinley, who's a fourth-round pick, very similar player to Robert Hunt. I actually thought he was the best impact lineman that they took, and sure enough, he has been. So the offensive line's been better, but you want to talk about long-term here for Tua? The guys that they really need to step up haven't really been the guys stepping up. It's been, Flowers, the left guard, has been a solid pass protector. The center they signed from New England has been solid. The right side with these rookies has been better what they had last year, but that's not saying much. They have not been particularly good, and Austin Jackson's been out. So I'm still worried about the offensive line, but the surrounding unit here is certainly better. They've improved it enough, and they're ready for Tua. Because they knew where this season was going with Fitzpatrick. He's playing great right now, but that's not sustainable. I've been saying it for weeks, and even Dolphins fans didn't argue at that point. We all knew that, they've gotten lucky to this point. Fitzpatrick has been awesome. If they kept him in there, they'd probably win 6 or 7 games. There's going to be some weeks where they're a stinker. And then you look back and wonder, would we have been better off giving Tua the nod to develop and see what you have? So I like this decision to go to Tua, and I'm really excited to see the Dolphins because they are a solid football team that now that they have promise at the quarterback position, the ceiling just opened up. The AFC East is opening up. The Patriots are 2-3. The Bills have lost 2 in a row. The AFC East is opening up. And if Tua is good, there's no reason the Dolphins can't compete this year to win 9-10 games and win the AFC East if Tua is legitimately really good. And I won't get into Tua too much. All of my draft takes on Tua are out there if you want to go back and check those out. I was not a huge Tua guy. I had him as my third quarterback in this class behind Jordan Love. I did see him as a really high floor, ready to play now rookie. Compared him to Jimmy Garoppolo in a lot of ways. Very similar to Dak Prescott as a player as well. We'll see if the arm is legit enough, if he is athletic enough and extends plays at a high enough level to be like an elite guy. But I feel very good about him coming in and playing well for this team as long as the offensive line is solid. So I'm really excited to see Miami. I think this was about the right time to do it. You could have waited a week and seen if Ryan Fitzpatrick, had one of these stinkers. But I'm not going to be critical of that. I think they did this the right way. They got him up to speed. They made sure his hip is healthy, and let's go. It's go time now. So I'm really excited for that. Good for Miami. Big week for Dolphins. Big couple of weeks for the Dolphins fans. And then the last note here is Xavier Howard, a cornerback for the Dolphins, is playing like a superstar corner right now, which is fun to see. He got paid a pretty hefty contract to be that 1-2 punch with Byron Jones, and he has been an alpha since coming back from injury, so they're clearly happy about that. All right, so our next game here, Green Bay at Tampa Bay. Man. Pardon my French here. Kids, tune out for the next 10 seconds. The Green Bay Packers shit themselves this week. Oh my God. That was bad. I said in my Patreon picks, stay away from this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa Bay wins. I picked the Packers, but I picked them by like 1 point, I think. I thought it was going to be a really good game. The Bucs came out, played really well. And we'll talk about the Bucs in a second. But oh my God, the Packers just absolutely didn't show up. And the second I say that, people are going to instantly, because people love to hate on Aaron Rodgers, will be like, oh, you're making excuses for Rodgers. No, Rodgers played like crap. Just like the running backs did, which doesn't matter. But the receivers played like crap. Davante Adams had an all-time softy performance. Just like the second he got touched was like, eh. The second pick was all on Davante Adams. Also was probably pass interference, but whatever. Like, Davante Adams is the opposite of Michael Thomas. Some ways that's great. Like, he gets open better than Michael Thomas, can be used in the whole field. Michael Thomas, on the other hand, like, if you bump into him before the ball gets there, he's going to push you back. He's going to box you out. He's going to make those tough catches on those slants. Davante Adams has proved over the last couple of years he's not a good contested catch guy. And he's let Rodgers down in some big moments. So that's a big flaw with Davante. And then, of course, after him, I think I'm like sick to my stomach. This was the week that it revealed itself. We were so critical of the Packers, all of us, whether you like the Packers or not. We shredded this team for not taking advantage of the deepest receiver class maybe ever, and it's showing early. Like Chase Claypool, could have had him. Laviska Shenault, could have had him. KJ Hamler, I don't know if he's good or not, but he could have had him. Devin Duvernay for Baltimore. Could have had him. Could have had all these guys. It was a crazy good class. Freaking, what's his name? Tyler Johnson for the Bucs. He's like their fourth target. Would have been the best receiver on the field for Green Bay on Sunday. So, they had an injury. Allen Lazard got hurt. Devin Funchess opted out. That was their plan. That was a terrible plan. That was a garbage plan, Brian Gutekunst. We all knew it. Maybe if the Packers fans are lucky, they'll go and make a move. They'll treat this as an eye-opening moment, give Atlanta a call about Julio Jones, give Cincinnati a call about A.J. Green, give their opponent this week a call about Kenny Stills maybe. I don't know. There's options out there, but I don't think they'll do it because this front office is just stubborn and, frankly, a lot of the time stupid. So that showed. The receivers didn't play well. The offensive line was not great, especially after Bakhtiari went down. Rodgers was under a ton of pressure, especially in the second half. And then the defense, where was the pass rush? Where's this vaunted pass rush? We know the linebackers aren't good. They've ignored this position systematically for a decade, and the secondary wasn't good either. Jair Alexander's the only one that came to play. Adrian Amos was terrible in this game. Darnell Savage, where are you at? Kevin King missed this game. Freaking Josh Jackson, what a terrible pick that was. Second-round pick. He can't even get his head around. So the entire team didn't show up. And the problem is here, this is what the Packers did last year. It's when they lost. They won, 14, 15 games last year? 14 games, including the playoffs. They're now 4-1 this year. When they fall behind, they have no counterpunch. And it's because they don't have talent. They don't have talent. Rodgers gets into hero mode because he's used to his defense just getting slaughtered, and he knows, I can't, at least in his mind, and I don't think he's right for this. I think he gets ahead of himself in these games, and that's a flaw of his. I'll be critical of him, but he gets in these, I got to play hero ball. I can't, dink and dunk, and I got to come back now. And I think that does hurt him, but the fact that he doesn't have any talent, the defense seemingly never gets that big stop for this team when they're trailing. And then offensively, they just didn't make plays. Equanimeous St. Brown came back. He only got 10 snaps, but he dropped a ball. He's throwing to Mercedes Lewis. He dropped a ball. Devontae Adams was weak sauce in this game. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a historically bad contested catch guy. It's just a brutal team when they get off script. They're kind of like the Baltimore Ravens, just a completely different team. If they get off script, they don't have the ability to get into 40 dropbacks, even though they have Aaron Rodgers. This receiving core is a problem, and they went up against as we transition out of the Bucs, they went up against one of the best secondaries in the league, and they got just dumped on. Jamel Dean was better than Devontae Adams, and the rest of those guys just dunked on these practice squad caliber receivers for the Packers. So the Packers will be okay. I think they'll take somewhat of a look in the mirror. Hopefully they do get Allen Lazard back soon. They need to make a trade if they want to get real, because these Bucs are only getting better. The Niners, they got to play the Niners in a few weeks. The Niners are heating up. They got to play Seattle. If they're going to get into these shootouts, which is inevitable this season without fans, without a defense, they gotta have playmakers out there, and they just don't have them. They don't have a single vertical presence on this team that you trust. That includes Devontae Adams. I don't trust Devontae Adams in a key moment going up for a big catch 50 yards downfield. In the rhythm of the offense, when you can scheme them up and you can get them one-on-one because the other team is so worried about the run game, Devontae Adams is great. But they need an alpha. And Allen Lazard has kind of been that guy, but man, let's move on. I think the Packers will bounce back. I want to take a victory lap on the Bucs because this season has gone exactly like I predicted. I said they'd start slow. They started slow. Being Tom Brady, being more of this chemistry-based quarterback. I said that Chris Godwin was going to be the key cog to this offense instead of Mike Evans. They came out. Their biggest win this year was with Chris Godwin as the primary receiver. Mike Evans did nothing in this game. I said the defense would get better as the year went on because they're so young. I said that Their secondary was underrated and on the way up, and that Carlton Davis, who was on my top 10 breakouts list, was going to have a huge year. He's doing it. He's playing right there with the guy on the other side of the field in Jair Alexander. He's playing as one of the best corners in football right now. So, the Bucs are looking exactly like I predicted. Even them beating Green Bay. Packers fans went at me in my playoff prediction. I said that the Packers wouldn't match up well against the Bucs because these receivers would be too much for them, and they have, at that point in time, a secondary that could match a poor Packers receiving group, and that's exactly what we saw in this first matchup. So the Bucs are trending up. I think it was on the podcast last week where I said that that last week was a nice time to get on some Super Bowl futures for them. I did think Green Bay would beat them, though, and then that price would come down, so I unfortunately did not do that. I did get them several weeks ago. But, yeah, man, the Bucs are right there, I think, with Green Bay, obviously, and Seattle, and the Rams, and I guess if you want to throw the Saints in there, the NFC playoff picture is really interesting right now. I know Seattle hasn't lost yet. I do think they're the favorite, but it's really tightening up, and it's fun to see. So let's move on. We're already at the 30-minute mark. We got a decent amount of games left here. So we got Cleveland-Pittsburgh. I called for the Browns to step up this week. Prove that you can graduate from, the analogy I used was it's Thanksgiving. You can come into the dining room, but you're a good team. You can come into the dining room, but you're going to be sitting at the kids' table. If you can beat the Steelers, you can come sit at the big boys' table. Yeah, they're staying at the kids' table. This was a complete ass whooping by the Steelers. Oh my God. For one, the line play, for all this talk about Cleveland's offensive line, about Myles Garrett, and Cleveland being this tough, nasty team, which I've been saying, Pittsburgh was like, really? You want to see tough? You want to see physical? You want to see tenacity and experience? Here we go. Here we go, Cleveland. And they just were throwing sucker punches all game long, both sides of the ball. The Browns' offensive line got walloped by the Steelers. Steelers' defense is so legit. Now, they lost Devin Bush. That sucks for them. They do still have Vince Williams. But, yeah, that's a blow. He added some athleticism to the middle of that defense that they're going to miss. And then offensively, Steelers just got the job done. They're kind of creative. I like what they're doing with Chase Claypool, who is just a total steal. I mean, man, look at the Green Bay Packers. Like, you could have had A.J. Dillon or Chase Claypool. You would have had to trade up for Dillon, but whew. He's a monster. 6'4", 238. He's not even a full-time starter for them, but yeah, he is just unguardable. He is looking like a future superstar. He is a superstar. I mean, he's made Juju Smith-Schuster, who's a damn good receiver, an afterthought. So, Steelers are creative in offense. They're tough. The Steelers' defense is nasty. This is why, when I do my deep dives, this is why culture matters so much. It's everything. Culture is just everything. And the Steelers proved that again on Sunday. And then for the Browns, it was a fairly predictable outcome. I wanted to give them a chance because they've looked really tough. They've looked like a well-coached team. And it was just, the Browns are going to brown. It's exactly what happened. And then Baker. I know he's playing with cracked ribs, played through it, he's tough, I get it. Problem is, the mistakes he was making in this game, throwing picks over the middle of the field, holding the ball too long, being inaccurate downfield, you can make an excuse and say it's a cracked rib thing. Problem is, that's been him all year. Baker has been really poor. I want to give him a chance. He's great as a rookie, but the excuses are starting to stack up here quite a bit. It was in year 2, he didn't have an offensive line. Well, outside of this week, he's had an offensive line all year. He's had weapons. The excuses were he didn't have a good coach. I think Stefanski's a pretty good coach. So, he's good. He's a decent quarterback. But is he a guy that Cleveland right now is anywhere close to wanting to extend. I'm sure they'll pick up his fifth-year option when the time rolls around, but Baker has a lot to prove before he is a franchise quarterback here. And I'm not going to take a victory lap yet because I still think he could prove to be a franchise quarterback. But I didn't like Baker coming out of the draft. I didn't think he had the physical traits. I thought he was a decent athlete. I didn't think I was kind of wrong on this. His arm is legitimately good. But I worried about his accuracy pushing the ball downfield. I worried about his playing in that Oklahoma offense and showing some flaws and having too many tendencies pushing the ball over the middle of the field, which are still hurting him today. He's starting to throw more and more picks as teams have realized that Baker wants to throw those 15-yard dig routes. He wants to throw those crossing routes, those slants over the heads of the linebackers. And the linebackers are creeping back more and more. You're seeing more and more of those picks. And Baker's not adjusting. So there's aspects where I was wrong about Baker. I had Darnold over him. I had Josh Allen over him. I had Lamar Jackson over him. I had Josh Rosen over him. We all like Josh Rosen for the most part. But if we're sitting here 2 years from now, if Sam Darnold gets the Ryan Tannehill rejuvenation, getting away from Ryan Gase, I'm not completely out on Darnold. The Jets clearly are just not a competent organization. Josh Allen, I think you clearly are taking over Baker. Lamar, you're obviously taking over Baker. That draft take is starting to play out, and I even said that he's a higher floor, lower ceiling prospect, and that's why I like these other guys more, because I like their upside better. So, and Sam Darnold is only as old as Baker was coming into the league right now. So I'm not trying to say I was right about Baker over Darnold, but ask yourself right now, if you were starting fresh, would you rather roll the dice with Baker or Darnold? I think my answer is Darnold, honestly. It's an interesting conversation that I'm excited to see play out over the next 2 years. I think is really, we're going to need that much time to know if the Browns made the right decision on Baker, if they were right to pass up on Darnold, who, let's be fair, Darnold hasn't been great. He's been about as bad as Baker's been over the last 2 years. But, interesting. All right, Rams, Niners. This is why I stood by the Niners. It's exactly what I said about the Steelers. You bet over the course of a season, you bet on coach and culture and quarterback. And I know Jimmy is not an elite quarterback. I'm not trying to say that, but he's a good quarterback. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. And he was struggling to start the year, was not healthy. And the reason I like the Niners is they understand what they need to do to win. They clearly hit the lab this week. They came with an excellent game plan. Jimmy came out sharp, prepared, ready to win. Kyle Shanahan, dominant play calling. This is why you like the Niners. They are tough. They are the hardest team in the league to tackle. They're figuring things out on defense. They have an excellent front office with John Lynch. That Jason Verrett signing is saving that secondary. Absolutely saving it, because Richard Sherman is out. He's gone. He's been injured. Jason Verrett, who was a star corner years ago, if he finishes this season healthy, he's going to get a massive payday. Rightfully so. He has his burst back. Man, it's fun to see Jason Verrett. The Niners culturally are so sound. And yeah, they got blown out by the Dolphins. They've been injured to all hell. But you bet on coach, you bet on culture, and more often than not, it pays out. And it's not like the Rams have a bad culture, don't get me wrong. But Kyle Shanahan is just a different animal. The play calling in this game was unbelievable. The game plan here was perfect. They moved the pocket away from Aaron Donald, who has been wrecking games, and they only targeted Jalen Ramsey twice. Kyle Shanahan was like, why would I put myself in a situation where you're really, only 2 stars on defense can wreck my game plan? No, we're gonna get away from them. Darnold had 3 pressures. Donald, we were just talking about Darnold. Donald only had 3 pressures in this game, his worst game of the season. It's not his fault. It's Kyle Shanahan taking him out of the game. Gotta love what you saw. You got Ayuk, you got Debo, you got Kittle, Jimmy Garoppolo. a scheme that's proven, and a tough defense. The one thing you can say about the Niners is their defense is not going to be what it was last year. They lost Bosa, who's maybe the best pass rusher in football outside of Aaron Donald. It's going to hurt. But the nice thing about them is they're very well coached. Robert Saleh is an excellent defensive coach. I'm always a fan of these defensive coaches that are on the field. They have a feel for the game. They are in tune with their players. And it leads to the Niners being one of the fastest, most disciplined, well-tackling teams in the league. And sure, they might not have this high upside, explosive pass rush and be this elite defense like they were last year. But you've got Shanahan and those guys on offense to compensate for that. But what you can be is a defense that makes you earn every single yard. And that is what this defense is. You got Fred Warner, Quan Alexander, and his name's escaping me, but he is an under-the-radar stud for the Niners. Their third linebacker. They have 3 linebackers that would start on most teams. It's bugging me that I can't think of his name, but he is a player. And they fly around, and they tackle well. And that counts for a lot in this league, especially this year where defense just isn't king. It never is, but this year especially. And then for the Rams, I think they'll be fine, but this was kind of, an eye-opening week where they're a good, not great team, I think. They have a great game plan. McVay's good. They have good receivers. They have a decent defense that can make plays when they need it. But you got Jared Goff, who just isn't really elevating too much. They're a really good football team. They're going to win a lot of games. I think they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're really a Super Bowl contender. All right. Then we have Atlanta, Minnesota. Minnesota's season is over. This was a disaster from Kirk Cousins. Oh, my God. The Minnesota Vikings are in the hardest position in the NFL right now because they have Kirk Cousins on a fully guaranteed $85 million contract that goes through 2022, the next 2 seasons. They have their stars are old. You got Harrison Smith. That's not entirely true. They are getting younger on defense. I forgot that Linval's gone, Griffin's gone. They've kind of moved on from that era defense, but they're still learning if this can be a good defense, if they have the right guys. But they have an offense that is just so far away from being... And it's not even that. It's like they are just missing at every spot. They're missing something. Receiver, they're missing depth, assuming Thielen is going to be aged out here. Offensive line, they have 2 good players. The rest of them are terrible. You have a quarterback that's not going to elevate that depth in Kirk Cousins. Defensively, you got a couple good pass rushers, but your interior sucks. Linebackers are solid. The secondary is just a mess. They have top guys, but they have so much rebuilding to do. They're in this idea that they want to win right now. They don't have a lot of cap flexibility. I wouldn't want anything to do with that nightmare team building scenario for the Vikings. And their season that was supposed to be a good year for them is toast. They couldn't move the ball in the Atlanta Falcons. Oh, and by the way, they just gave Dalvin Cook $13 million. That's only going to make things harder on their rebuild. Jeez. And then for Atlanta, hear me out. This was a terrible win for Atlanta because now they're 1-5. Okay, so you're not making the playoffs. You have a 36-year-old Matt Ryan. What do you do with him? You just hurt your draft stock. You're probably not getting Trevor Lawrence now because they're probably going to win another game. If they just made this announcement that they're going to try to win, I'm sure Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley can win at least another game. So you're settling for Fields or Lance. Okay, it's not Trevor Lawrence. I was all in on Atlanta saying, let's trade Matt Ryan. Let's trade Julio Jones. Let's blow this thing up and get Trevor Lawrence and have a legitimate fast track to a rebuild here. And it's not going to happen now. I get it. You don't want to give up on the season. You don't want to give up on your team, but why? Why? I wouldn't have been all that happy about this win if I was a Falcons fan. I don't know, kind of just a gross game where I'm sitting there like, why? Why can't the Vikings beat the Falcons? Why do the Falcons want to win this game? It's not like you're playing in front of fans that you're going to be embarrassed either. Why not tank in this year? It's perfect. It would have been perfect for Atlanta. Now they're like, what, going to be stuck in Matt Ryan purgatory until he retires at 42? Why? I don't know. Okay, Baltimore at Philly. This was mostly a blowout, but Philly fought back. I tweeted this about Philly. Some teams are just bad. Like some teams are just, they don't have the talent. They can't win games. Whereas Philly is just a train wreck. And Dallas, ironically, both in the NFC West. Like they have the talent, but everything goes wrong. They miss key field goals. They have bad play calling on fourth down. Big drops. Just dumb stuff. Not disciplined. It's weird. It's like the NFC East is cursed or something. Now, for the most part, you're actually probably walking out of this week feeling better if you're an Eagles fan than you did the week before for two reasons. Number one is Carson Wentz looked great this week. He's looked really good for the last few weeks. He's looked like a quarterback prepared to carry this team to a 6-7 win NFC West championship. Yuck. Fulgham was good again. Now the offensive line was terrible, but the defense was actually... The defense did some things. That D-line is playing well right now. The defense did some things this week. I know they gave up a lot of points, but they really bunkered down in the second half and were a big part of this comeback. Philly, I do think, will win the NFC West. What they'll do with that, probably not much unless they get like miraculously healthy. Then they could, in theory, be a pretty good team come playoff time. But, I think they're a 6-7 win team that loses to the best wild card team. Is probably their fate. For Baltimore, I respect what they're doing. We've talked a lot about coach and culture, and the Ravens are doing what I wish more teams did. Taking a look in the mirror and asking, what do we need to do to be a championship team? Take Atlanta, for example. Maybe tank. Like, where are we going? What do we want to do to win a Super Bowl? And that's what Baltimore's doing because they recognize, despite all of the Ravens fans that wanted to deny it, the Ravens themselves recognize they have something really special in Lamar Jackson. But what they did last year was not sustainable. It never was going to be sustainable. Ravens fans are slowly accepting that. It was a gimmicky offense that worked insanely well. Lamar won an MVP from it. They kicked ass. They were one of the best offenses in the league. But when you have such a gimmicky offense, and I'm sorry for calling it that, it's what it was. It was a read option offense that basically their number one option in the passing game was Mark Andrews off of play action up the middle. They ignored the receivers as a whole. That was not ever going to be a sustainable win. A sustainable way to have Lamar Jackson as a franchise quarterback and for this team to win Super Bowls because they go up against smart teams or good offenses where they throw off their game script and they couldn't keep pace. 2 years in a row now. So what they're doing is saying, we want to develop Lamar Jackson. We want to use games like against the Eagles. We want to use games like the Bengals. We want to start developing Lamar as a pocket passer, which is really smart. And I think Lamar is actually going to develop in that way. Now, because of this, you got to keep in mind, Lamar might be in his third season, but he's thrown about a year's worth, a rookie year's worth of passes. I bet if you took coming into this season, Lamar had, 25 starts? Would have had, I think it was 9 his rookie year, and then he had 17, so 26 starts. In those 26 starts, I bet his total pass attempts will be very similar to what, say, Joe Burrow's will be after a 16-game season. He was almost dead last in attempts per game last year. I think he was among starters. They didn't run a traditional offense. And because of that, Lamar's not getting these reps. He's not comfortable with, okay, it's 3rd and 12. They're going to bring the rush. I need to stand in the pocket, make a read, make a great play downfield, or I need to manipulate the pocket in the right way. Do all these things we talk about with elite quarterbacks. Lamar he shows flashes of it, which is why you have the promise. That's why the Ravens are doing this and trying to develop it in him. But he hasn't had the reps there. He didn't do it at Louisville. He hasn't done it in the NFL. And they are trying to get there with Lamar. But like I said, he's had some learning curves. He's throwing balls in the dirt. He's bailing from pockets too much. He's missing balls down the field. He's had his flaws. Now, I'm done doubting Lamar, right? Now, I think where I had Lamar coming into the year is proving out to be really good analysis. I congratulated him on a great season. I would have voted for Russ for MVP, but I have no problem with Lamar getting MVP. They had an amazing season. But as a quarterback, he's about the 6th best quarterback or so, which I think is exactly where I ranked him. And they want him to be an elite quarterback. They want him to be Russell Wilson. They want him to be Patrick Mahomes. And I think he can be, but he needs to develop. All right. Let's move on. Chicago at Carolina. Bears fans hate me right now. They absolutely can't stand it. I ranked them 15th in the power rankings. Like, did we learn nothing? Bears fans, have you learned, did you either A, start watching football yesterday, or B, learn nothing from the Bears of 2017, the Bills last year, the Jags it was the Bears of 2018, the Jags of 2017, many teams like them before them in this offensive league? Have we learned nothing, Bears fans? Because that's what it sounds like. You sound exactly like you did when I picked the Eagles to beat you in the playoffs, and you scored 16 points, and yeah, you double-doinked it, but you scored 16 points with Mitchell Trubisky, and you lost. What do you want, Bears fans? You want to be ranked in the top 10? Well, the list of top 10 teams, those are teams that can win a Super Bowl. Are the Bears going to win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles? In a year, specifically, where there's no crowds? You want to get the most out of that defense, you need crowd noise. You need silent counts. You need Khalil Mack wrecking games, which, by the way, isn't really happening this year. That's how this defense could potentially be a Super Bowl team. And even beyond that, you need like a running game. You need like a good running game. They don't really have that. Bears are fine. They've won 5 really tight games. Yeah, they beat the Bucs. The Bucs didn't have Chris Godwin. And even then, there's some really questionable calls in that game. Bears fans are going to hate that. It's the truth. The Bears are a good football team. I wouldn't say anything other than that. I didn't say anything other than that coming into the year. The ball has landed their way this year. They might win 10 games now. They might win 11 games now. Are they going to beat the Packers for the NFC North? I don't think so. Not unless they start, being able to score more than 20 points a week. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Bears fans. I'm sorry that I look at history of defensive-minded teams with one of the most anemic offenses in the NFL. I mean, you know how far down that power rankings list you got to go before you hit an offense worse than the Bears? I mean, you got to go down to like 24, 25, 26. I mean, the Bears have a bottom 5 to 10 offense easily. That's not a winning formula. Their offense consists of, getting 2 or 3 yards on the first couple plays and then hoping Allen Robinson or one of these tight ends can make a play. Whew. As for Carolina, not much has really changed. I still like their future. I still love the ownership, the coaching. I think Teddy's doing a good job. It is very clear that Teddy Bridgewater is not the future. He never was. The Panthers are having a good season, definitely better than you could have hoped for. I think their future is bright, but we didn't really learn anything this week. Bears defense was just too much for that Panthers offense to handle. Then we have the Bengals-Colts game. Grab a sip of water real quick. Oh my God, it is just a blizzard out there right now. Minneapolis is just white. Just a sheet of white. All right. Bengals at Colts. This was a fun game to watch. So, let's start with the Colts side. Because, I mean, the Bengals, I don't even have much to say. Like, they're the Bengals. Joe Burrow's fun. Threw a pick to end the game here that he probably wants back. It was not a good pick. He's starting to press a little bit. I'm worried about the Bengals ruining Joe Burrow. I'm hoping he's good enough to persevere, but, like, draft some linemen, Cincinnati. Draft some linemen. All right, for the Colts, I was so hard on Phillip Rivers. I've been hard. He's not been great over the last 2 weeks. You've watched him the last 2 weeks, and you're like, just doesn't look right. It doesn't look like that should be your quarterback. And he wasn't throwing the ball with authority downfield. You know he doesn't have mobility. He's throwing bad picks. Then he comes out in the first quarter of this game. They're not able to move the ball. They're down 21-0. And I'm like, I'm out. I'm out, Rivers. I've loved you. I've stood behind you for years. But I'm just done with this. They need more, Indianapolis. And then he goes out. Literally the next time he touches the football, he starts the best quarter of his career. Throws for like 200 yards in a quarter. Complete second quarter comeback. Reminiscent of like what Patrick Mahomes did. Obviously without the mobility, but reminiscent of what he did against the Texans in the playoffs last year. Like he was just lights out. And out of nowhere, he's hitting Marcus Johnson on just a lightning strike downfield. Like, where did that come from, Phillip? Like, you didn't show that arm talent all year, and then all of a sudden he's just like shakes it off, and he just gets out there and throws a lightning strike with velocity 50 yards downfield. Beautiful ball. So I was like, whoa. Okay, Phillip, I see you. I'm back. Can I come back? You got any room on the train? Like, geez. I liked this Colts Rivers marriage coming into the year, but it just hasn't looked right until the second quarter of this game, where it was like, boom, he's got a deep threat in Marcus Johnson. All of a sudden, him and T.Y. Hilton have a chemistry, and Hilton's making good plays on the sideline. The offensive line starts blocking much better. Jack Doyle's making catches. This offense was back, and the defense is solid here for Indianapolis. So, huge comeback win for Indy. It went from first quarter, like, is this going to be a lost season? Are they going to be looking for a quarterback again? To all of a sudden, whoop, we back. We're a playoff team. We can move the ball. We can play defense. We're well coached. We can come back from this deficit. And they did it. And Julian Blackmon, the free safety, got the interception against Burrow. And it was an interesting play. I feel like I've been making excuses for all of Burrow's interceptions. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I don't think that's a ball that Burrow is going to be able to make. He's trying to throw it up the seam on I'm trying to draw the trajectory. I think it would have been an over route from the slot. I think he was targeting Tyler Boyd. It could have been a post, but he's trying to throw it over the deep middle of the field. And it must have been cover 3, could have been quarters. I need to watch the all 22, but basically he's trying to squeeze it into the second level, behind the linebackers and underneath the safety. And he does. He gets it over the linebackers, and it was an accurate throw. The problem is, I think if Chargers fans want some Herbert love, I think if Herbert makes that throw, he probably squeezes it in there. Because that was the knock on Burrow, is like, he's not going to make these unbelievable, throwing the ball through a keyhole type of throws. He doesn't have that velocity. And he wish he did on that throw, because I do think that if you're talking about, Rodgers or Herbert or Stafford, Mahomes, like, they can fire that thing in there before the safety can get there. But Burrow doesn't quite have that zip. And it was just enough for Julian Blackmon, who I quietly and carefully said that he has a chance to be better than Malik Hooker. And he's looking like it. He looks like a superstar. I loved him coming out. He's coming off the ACL injury. I think if he didn't have that ACL injury in his final game at Utah, I do think he would have been a first-round pick. And he looks like it. This looks like a total steal for the Colts. Just another great example of drafting by Chris Ballard. And if he hits at the level it looks like, you're going to have potential superstar at all three levels. Because you have Buckner now as your superstar defensive lineman. You have Darius Leonard, who's been awesome. And then you have a potential superstar, I think, in an emerging free safety. And you had two of the best free safeties in the league through the first 6 weeks of the season in this game, because Jesse Bates for the Bengals, another good free safety call by me. He is awesome. So, did I have him on my breakouts list? I'm trying to remember. I'd have to go back and look. But, yeah, it was a fun game to watch. The Bengals are a tough team. We talked about the Bengals. I do still like Joe Burrow, but I want to see him get some pass protection. So then we have Denver, New England. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games left. We're doing okay here. So Denver, New England. Drew Lock, he makes some plays. I get why you'd get excited about him. He's got the traits. He's doing a good job with his mobility. I do like that. I think the velocity on his ball looks great. Like, the traits are clearly there. That was never really a question. Now, my comp for him, as was with many people, was Jay Cutler. And I think that's very true. Like, Jay Cutler would run around, he would throw some darts, he would make some great plays, but he would also do what Drew Lock did in this game, where you've got two really bad picks in the second half, inaccurate, not really executing any rhythm, passing. He's just so raw. So raw. I'm not ready to make any statements on him, but I'm certainly not in on Drew Lock. He's a fun player to watch. I get the excitement if you're Denver, but like I said, there's no rhythm. Every time he goes deep, it feels like there's a 50-50 chance that it's either getting picked or he's going to just be wildly inaccurate. He's got the traits. Josh Allen developed with them, but he does not have Josh Allen traits. He's got Jay Cutler traits. He's got Matthew Stafford traits. So we'll see. I'm concerned there's no, like I said, there's no rhythm passing. There's no anticipatory throws. It's all he needs to see the guy come open, or he's just throwing a contested ball. And when you have Jerry Jeudy, you're wasting that talent with the stuff he can do as a route runner, with the anticipation, comebacks, ins, outs, anticipating those quick cuts of Jerry Jeudy. On one hand, you're lucky that he's able to get so open, but there's such an untapped potential there with the anticipatory passing game. There's a reason Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen were so good together, because they had anticipation and chemistry together. I don't think Drew Lock and Jerry Jeudy, frankly, will ever have that. And then on the Patriots side, I don't want to overreact to Cam Newton, because everyone's going to keep pointing to what he did against Seattle. And I admitted I was wrong after that Seattle game. Like, he was so good, accurately throwing the ball downfield, throwing with anticipation and accuracy. But other than that game, he hasn't been good. Like, frankly, he's been bad. And this is it. Other than the Seattle game, Cam Newton has looked like the Cam Newton that I thought we'd see, where he's not accurate downfield, where whatever you say about his physical traits and his running ability and the injuries and all that stuff, he's never been a comfortable pocket presence guy. He's always been too flat-footed in the pocket. Same criticisms I have of Dak Prescott, Derek Carr, all those, middling quarterbacks, where they don't have that natural feel for sensing pressure and then knowing how and when to use their feet to extend plays. Cam Newton far too often is standing in there with his hitched mechanics, and he's just standing there flat-footed, literally barely moving his feet at all. If anything, he's shuffling them slowly. There's no movement. He's a catapult. I called him a catapult. You can go check the record. I called him a catapult after his MVP season. Said he doesn't move in the pocket, and he's still showing that here in New England. And he's trusting the offensive line too much, and he doesn't have receivers getting open quick enough for that to work. So that's the problem. Like, just forget the processing, the accuracy, the arm talent, what the receivers are doing, all of that. that's always been probably my biggest criticism of Cam Newton as a passer, other than not being an accurate vertical thrower, which is another problem that's certainly there. Because I do think he's a smart quarterback. I think he's a good decision maker. He reads defense as well. But the pocket presence is a problem. So I'm going to criticize that of Cam Newton. Now, they didn't practice this week. That's the excuse people keep making for him. And he doesn't have good playmakers. So there's some reasons to wait this out, but certainly some concerns with Cam Newton there. Okay, Detroit, Jacksonville. Simply put, Detroit has some life. Don't know if I would bet on this going anywhere, but you got Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, you got TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, AP is running well, this offensive line is playing well, obviously you got Stafford. This offense can have some life and come alive and become a relevant team. The defense, they played Jacksonville this week. In theory, their defense has potential because they've invested in it. You got a defensive-minded coach. I don't know. It was only Jacksonville, who, by the way, has had some fun. I think Gardner Minshew is probably going to quickly de-escalate to this sort of, Case Keenum, Tyrod Taylor, maybe even, like a Foles, Bridgewater, where he might get some starting opportunities for a needy team as like a bridge quarterback. But I think he's going to de-elevate to a non-franchise quarterback role, if that makes sense. And the Jags are in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. Let's move on. Washington, New York Giants. Another game I'm not going to spend too much time on. It was about as gross as you could imagine. If you didn't watch this game, picture it, and that's what happened. Sloppy turnovers, few explosive plays. Daniel Jones throws a terrible pick that lets the Washington team back in this game. Kyle Allen running for his life, not really able to do anything. That was the game. Wasn't a good game to watch. One of my takeaways in this game was, what's the big difference between Kyle Allen and Daniel Jones? If you're on the podcast, I'm grimacing right now. There's not much of a difference. Jones is, I guess, more of a better processor at throwing the ball over the middle of the field, throwing with a little more anticipation. Jones did throw a beautiful ball in the back corner of the end zone to Darius Slayton, but based on what we saw from Kyle Allen last year and what we've seen from Daniel Jones, similar athletes, similar arm talent, both make stupid, mind-numbing mistakes on a consistent basis. Both have consistently made turnovers that cost their team the ability to win games. What's the big difference between these guys? And considering Daniel Jones was the 6th overall pick, that's not something the Giants want to be saying right now. Matt Pert started at right tackle. He was maybe my guy in the draft. I loved Matt Pert. There was a lot of time where I had him above Mekhi Becton, who the Jets took, who looks like a good player, and I'm glad I did move Becton over Pert because Becton looks really good. But there's clearly something here that I liked. He came out here, went up against Chase Young, held his own. Looks like he should have been starting at right tackle this whole time. I loved that pick. I loved this player. I was stunned that he fell to the 4th round. Was only, 35 snaps. I hope they start him moving forward, though. He looks like the truth at right tackle. And then you have at least Thomas and Matt Pert can develop together. But really excited to see him get out there and play well against Chase Young. And the Giants' defense is okay. It's been much better than I thought. I will continue to acknowledge that. Bradbury was a great signing. Their front 7 is playing in unity. Then we have Buffalo, Kansas City. Kind of a boring game, honestly. The Bills were not great. They just haven't been sharp. They've been making mistakes. Allen's been, obviously better than the first 2 years of Josh Allen. There's no doubt. Like, he's more confident. The game's slowing down. He's been, all in all, better at every aspect of quarterbacking. But you'll still see some of the old Josh Allen creep in, and that's why I was hesitant to hop in on Josh Allen as a top 10 quarterback. I did move him up quite a bit to like 12 or 13. But I feel pretty good about where I'm at with Josh Allen. Like, he is athletically dominant. There's going to be some great moments. And then there's going to be moments where he misses a big slant on 3rd and 6, like he did in this game. There's going to be moments like he had last week against the Titans, where he throws a ball down the seam, doesn't see a defender, and you're left wondering what he saw. There's moments in there. And to be an elite quarterback, you need to be really consistent. Maybe that's being overly harsh on Josh Allen, but I don't think you completely overwrite your flaws that you've shown for 3 straight seasons like Josh Allen has. Now, again, I like Josh Allen. I think he can even continue to get better because he's clearly shown the ability to do that. But some of those flaws have come out, and he hasn't been the only reason the Bills are losing. Their defense has not been great. There's been some big drops. But he's been a part of a problem over the last 2 weeks. But I think it'll be better as the season goes on. But this was a rough loss for Buffalo. They wanted to show the league that they can go up against, the 2 teams that were in the AFC Championship last year, the Chiefs and the Titans, the best of the best that the AFC has to offer, so to speak. You obviously got Baltimore and Pittsburgh. But, they haven't been able to do that. They haven't really been all that close at all to beating these teams, which that was supposed to be the next step, right? No one was denying last year that the Bills were a good football team, but Bills fans were acting like they were Super Bowl contenders before they really even showed anything. They couldn't beat the Texans in the playoffs last year for a lot of the same reasons. And a lot of those problems are still here. So, I'm not even going to say I had to pump the brakes. I never ranked the Bills as a top 5 team. I never said Josh Allen was a top 5 quarterback. I think they've improved. They're still a really good team. And I think if everything goes right, I still think they maybe could get to that level of being a Super Bowl team. They have a ton of talent. They need to figure out some things on the defensive side of the ball. And just maybe Josh Allen can go back to what he was the first 3 weeks of the season. As for the Chiefs, they, to me, re-cemented themselves as the best team in football. Probably never should have taken them out of that spot to begin with, if you want to talk about my power rankings. They were my Super Bowl pick coming into the year. They're the most well-balanced team in football. Yes, their defense was poor against the Raiders, but they've shown over the course of the season, look, no team, even the Chicago Bears or the Pittsburgh Steelers, no team is going to consistently play great defense for a 16-game season. It's another reason why I don't like teams like the Bears. Defense is as great as nice as it is to have a defense, it is very unsustainable on a week-to-week basis, or unpredictable rather. So yes, the Raiders got them last week. And no one's calling the Chiefs an elite defense, but you compare them to teams like the Bills here, to teams like the Packers, the Seahawks. Now the Ravens, they have a defense. The Steelers, they have a defense, but those teams don't have the offense that the Chiefs have. The Chiefs are a well-balanced team. They can win in a lot of different ways. If it's sloppy conditions and they need to run the ball and play defense, they can do it. If they get into a shootout, which they have done, they can do it. I think Chiefs are the best team in football. I think most rational people are going to agree with that. Now, Mahomes is continuing to not be great. I think this was a concern. I wish we would have seen Russell play this week because he was on bye. If Russell had another great week and Mahomes had this game, I'd feel pretty comfortable saying Russ is the best quarterback in football. I'm right there. It's what is the word? Tethering. I can't make up my mind. I think Rodgers showed that he is a couple of those guys this week. Didn't really show the ability to overcome adversity. Yeah, that's this game. The Chiefs are getting Le'Veon Bell. That's cool. I don't think they need him, but it's kind of similar to like what the Browns have with Hunt and Chubb. I don't think Bell will completely overtake Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he'll take away some goal line reps. I think he'll overtake him on a lot of third downs and what he does in the receiving game, in the screen game and stuff. It sucks for fantasy football. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, is still going to be the first, second down guy getting a lot of carries here. But, you'd rather go to Le'Veon Bell, I think, than Williams as their backup, who had a nice run in this game. It's just a running back, doesn't really matter. All right, our final game here, Arizona at Dallas. This was a rough game to watch. I pretty much turned it off. Like, I had it on, but I started working on the power rankings after that brutal no call that led to a pick. I think it was Kirkpatrick for the Cardinals, literally tackled CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys came out at half, and we'll get into the Dalton Dak thing here, but the Cowboys came out like with a game plan in the second half. They're like, okay, we're not running the ball. We're going to come out. We're going to pass, get the ball in the hands of these receivers. The same thing we do with Dak. Let's be aggressive. Let's pass. And it was working, and they draw up a corner route against man coverage, which is a great call. CeeDee Lamb on Kirkpatrick on a corner route, like, that should work. And Kirkpatrick gets all grabby, treats CeeDee Lamb like a freaking teddy bear, tackles him, and stays on his feet. Dalton tries to throw with anticipation on the corner route, as you're supposed to. Impossible to know if it was going to be an accurate throw or not, because we didn't even get to see where Lamb ended up. But it gets picked. And how they didn't call that, and then they go and throw a pass interference on the Cowboys because two guys' feet gets tangled up in the end zone. It was just, I had to turn it off. I was like, this game is just, Dallas is obviously not the better team. They don't deserve to win this game. But the fact that game was a blowout, I don't think it should have been. So I want to get into this Dalton versus Dak conversation because Twitter got hot. And I think it was a Cowboys beat writer, probably just went to Twitter and dug up like Dalton, Dak, whatever. And my tweet came up. I had tweeted a poll. It was over the offseason at some point, and it was a poll. I wasn't even saying they're better with Dak, but I thought it was an interesting conversation. Would they be better? Because Jamal Adams trade was up in the air, and they obviously can't afford Jamal Adams. And the poll was, I was just curious where the beat was on would the Cowboys be better with Dalton and Jamal Adams, because with Dalton's contract they could afford Jamal Adams, or just Dak Prescott. And it was a poll, and I wasn't alone. Like 40% of people said Dalton and Jamal Adams, and some Dallas beat writer grabs it and quote tweets it and was like, roasting me or whatever. And then Cowboys fans came at me, and then I get all defensive. Even the co-host of one of my favorite podcasts found it and quote tweeted it. I was just like, really? Are you really going to throw me under the rug for a poll that I made? There's got to be something else out there that's stupid. I have at no point, you can check the record, I have at no point said that the Cowboys are better with Dalton than they are with Dak. What I've said is they can win with Dalton if they do things the right way. What they did against Arizona was not doing things the right way. Now, where I will defend Andy Dalton is Dalton got just dismantled on Twitter by analysts that I respect. People saying, it was, I won't throw names out there, but someone was like, well, this confirms that Dak Prescott is the best quarterback in the NFL. Someone was like, we knew we weren't going to get 100% with Dak out, but we didn't know that we were going to get negative 100% with Dalton. And do we have eyeballs? Dalton had a couple throws in this game that were really bad. You don't want Dalton in comeback mode, down 3 scores. Nobody ever would have said that's what you want. The idea with Dalton is that he opens the door to do other things, to build a defense, to have more of a cohesive game plan, which is not what Dallas had in this game. The fact that people were shredding Dalton for this game, who, by the way, won the game for them last week. I guess we just forgot about that he did something Dak hasn't been able to do, and that's win a game at the end of the game, making big throws. Guess we're just going to ignore that. I guess we're just going to ignore the fact that Dak has had terrible turnovers this year. Dak has had drop picks this year. Dak has had 3 score deficits in the first half. Now, is that Dak's fault? No. Well, the turnovers are his fault. But I just thought it was just too much on Twitter last night for many reasons. A, this was not on Andy Dalton. Dalton was not great. No one's ever said Dalton is great. No one's ever said, like people say with Dak, that he's a top 10 quarterback. They were able to move the ball when they actually passed the ball, but they were running the ball on first down every single possession until they were down by 3 scores. Why aren't we throwing Zeke under the bus, who fumbled 2 drives away? Dalton was moving the ball. Dalton was trying, guys. You know who wasn't trying? Overpaid freaking Ezekiel Elliott, who just fumbled this game out of even competition. Like, I wouldn't, if you told me that Zeke was going to fumble twice in the first half, I wouldn't have said they could win this game with Andy Dalton. No way. Nuh-uh. Arizona turned that into 2 quick 14 points off of turnovers. Why aren't we shredding the Cowboys for paying Zeke $16 million? Why aren't those the tweets that we're digging up? Why aren't we digging up, Booger McFarland saying Zeke's the best running back in football? Why are we digging up a poll where I say, can the Cowboys win if they had also a scenario where they have Jamal Adams, who would, in theory, help their defense that gave up, just terrible deep balls? Just Twitter is just so much sometimes, man. So yeah, Dalton has getting just shredded for this game. He wasn't great. I'm not saying he was great. But like I said, Dak has had some big problems this year too that no one wants to talk about. So you have 2 drives killed with a fumble. You have 2 drives killed with free blitzers. You have a dropped touchdown, by the way. They're down 21-0. Dalton had a great drive no one wants to talk about. He had a big-time throw on 3rd and 12. He steps up in the pocket, delivers a strike for a should-have-been touchdown. Could have sparked some momentum. Nope, that gets dropped. I suppose that would have just been caught, though, if Dak was in at quarterback. Did we just forget how Dak looked against Seattle for the first 2.5 quarters? We forget how he looked against Cleveland for the first 2.5 quarters? So I just thought that was just crazy. People acting like Dalton is the worst quarterback to ever play and Dak is a god. That's not what I saw. I saw a Cowboys team that's in complete disarray. I had something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah. One of my lovely followers, I'm not going to call you out, I'm not going to roast you, but was coming at me for saying I'm biased and I'm stubborn with my takes and I'm like defending Dalton over things that I'm critical of Dak on. And no, it's not my fault that you don't understand expectations and perceptions. Like, nobody, myself included, is saying Andy Dalton is a $40 million quarterback and a top 5 to 10 quarterback in the league. No one's saying that. I've said Dalton in the right scenario, which is not a team that fumbles the ball twice in the first half and drops touchdowns and gives up easy touchdowns on blown coverages, and has a terrible pass interference that turns into a pick, a no call. No one's saying Dalton is a quarterback that can overcome those things. But I've been critical of Dak that he isn't a guy that can overcome those guys. And I hope he someday proves me wrong on this, but the first 4 weeks of the season, he didn't. Yeah, he had a bunch of garbage time comeback attempts. But, Dak was throwing bad picks. Dak was, fumbling balls away. Dak wasn't amazing. I don't know. You got to understand expectations. If people weren't saying Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback, if people weren't saying he needs to be paid $40 million, if people weren't saying that, I wouldn't be critical of Dak for not doing the things that you're supposed to do when you're a top 10 quarterback and getting paid $40 million. Because Dak doesn't do those things, just like Andy Dalton doesn't do those things. So you got to understand expectations. Comparing what I say about Dalton to comparing what I say about Dak is completely removing the context of my analysis for those 2 players. So I have to defend that a little bit. I don't know. Most of you guys probably don't care about all this Twitter BS, but it was just a lot in this game. But yeah, Dallas is in trouble. I think they can still have a good offense with Andy Dalton. But it needs to be supported by a run game. It needs to be supported by better defense, which I don't know if they're capable of doing. And it needs to be supported by better play calling. I know that they need to get a run game going, but that doesn't mean they need to run the ball on first down predictably every single possession. Dalton showed that he can throw the ball. And they were acting for their first few possessions like they were completely trying to protect him like he was some undrafted rookie. Like Dalton has been to the playoffs 5 times. He's been an MVP, not contestant, but contender. He's a capable quarterback. And I think he showed a lot of times in that game. Yeah, he had some bad throws. You're going to get that. He's not a great quarterback. There's a reason he's only getting paid $2 million. But he's competent. And to just completely protect him and never throw the ball on first down, that's not the recipe here. Have some confidence. They were playing with no confidence. That's a problem. Mike McCarthy, I think he's going to be one and done. His defenses always suck. His play calling always sucks. I know he's not the play caller here, but, he was the one that came up with the game plan here to try and run the ball with Zeke. So, Dallas, they're certainly a fascinating team this year, but, God, they're in trouble. Now, let's talk about Arizona to wrap up our game recaps. We're going to learn a lot about Arizona in the coming weeks. Their upcoming next 6 games are Seattle this week, which will be really fun. We get to see them go against Tua in Miami, Buffalo, Seattle, at New England, and the Rams. So they got some big-time games coming up. They're 4-2. They've had a pretty easy schedule to this point. And it's going to be fun to see how this offense stacks up. Kyler is such a tough guard. I think he's a more natural scrambler than Lamar Jackson. I think he's more comfortable knowing when to hang in the pocket, when to scramble. There's a reason I was so much higher on Kyler as a college prospect than I was on Lamar, because I think as a true passer, he's just much more comfortable. You want to design runs, sure, I think Lamar is a better athlete. He's faster. He's more of a true runner. But when Kyler starts scrambling, it is so hard to defend. It was probably the most attractive trait of his is he can go, he accelerates so well. Like his 10-yard split, I know we didn't get to see him run a 40, but his 10-yard split is just ridiculous. And when he decides to get out of the pocket, it's ridiculous how quick he goes 10 yards. And even when he's running to the sideline, like linebackers, he's just got this deceptive speed about him. I don't know if it's his short steps or the fact that he is so small, but he understands angles as a runner. He can stop and start so well. Such a remarkable athlete. And then he's starting to hit some deep balls, but the accuracy hasn't been, I think, up to his own standards. And if he can uncork a vertical passing game combined with this scrambling ability, because his ability as a scrambler is different than Lamar, Mahomes. Well, not Lamar, sorry. Lamar obviously has it, but Watson, Mahomes, Russell, Rodgers, those guys are creative and can get, good first downs with their legs. But when Kyler scrambles, it can go 30 yards, 40 yards, touchdown runs, really dangerous stuff. So he is so exciting. I'm all about him coming out against Russell Wilson and throwing his name into the MVP hat. I don't know if we're going to get that or not. I think he needs to be more accurate as a passer to do that. And he frankly needs better pass protection. They got it this week against Dallas, which is encouraging because I thought Dallas was gonna eat on the D-line, and they did not. So I'm excited for these next 6 weeks of Kyler Murray big-time football games. So he's been solid, but I think he could actually be much better. I think there's some untouched potential there with this Cardinals offense. All right, so there's the game recaps. I am going to pull up the Patreon mailbag. Again, guys, if you want to support the show and become a part of the show, You can do that through Patreon. It's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. And you can get access to this exclusive Patreon mailbag. Okay. So, and again, guys, if you're sending in these questions, I appreciate it. Please try and lead it with mailbag question because it makes it easier on me. Some of you guys have questions on Patreon that are not for the show. So if you want to, I'll click through all of them, but it does help if you start with mailbag question. Okay. From Stephen M. Was Robbie Anderson the glue holding the Jets together? Notice how he went to Carolina and they suddenly became good. No, I'm not going to go that far. I think that, Anderson had some really great moments. When Darnold was healthy, you could see it, right? There's a reason he got paid $10 million a year. Now, the big difference here is Adam Gase used him as you're going to run 9s and 7s and 8s. You're going to run go balls, you're going to run corners, you're going to run posts. You are exclusively a deep threat. Carolina have said, let's expand that route tree a little bit. Let's get you going on some outs and some comebacks and some ins and some crossers. Actually, I don't know how many crossers he's running this year. He's still been primarily an outside threat like that, but he's showing that he can do more. He's winning contested catches, and he's really working well with Teddy Bridgewater. This has been a big surprise for me. I thought he was going to come in here and be a decoy, which in a lot of times for the Jets, that's all he was. But I think that you're seeing Joe Brady use him so much better. And Adam Gase clearly was not using him in a versatile way. But yes, Robbie Anderson has been great. He's been really impressive. Total value for the Panthers to get him at $10 million a year. All right, from It's Seuss. Do you think Carlton Davis is getting too much credit for the interceptions he's getting? I think Jamel has been the most lockdown on the team, even though he doesn't get the picks. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Davis is a really good number 2 guy, big physical corner. You can move him around, get him on the more slow, stiff receiver for the other guys, whereas Jamel Dean is going to be your athletic lockdown guy. The picks are coming now for Dean. Dean, if you aren't up to speed, is a rising all-pro type of corner. Amazing athlete, total steal in the 3rd round out of Auburn. Just a stud. People around the league speak extremely high about Jamel Dean. Okay, from Loomer Coomer, long-term patron. Thank you, Loomer. I appreciate you, bro. If you had the option to put yourself on a network, would you accept the job or would you try to grow the TFG brand? Speaking of which, where do you see a TFG in 10 years? Wow, wasn't prepared for a career question. Great question, though. I would accept a job if NFL Network came calling. Yeah, it would be really hard to go work for ESPN. I just don't have respect for that company. I don't know if I would enjoy it. I don't think I would enjoy the freedom. I think NFL Network has a little more respect for itself. I think Fox Sports has a little more respect for itself. CBS Sports has a little more respect for itself. ESPN is all about clicks. They don't really care about your analysis. They just care about your takes. They're too PC friendly. I would love to work for The Athletic or, The Ringer. There's a lot of networks that I would love to work with. That said, the money would have to be better. I would have to have some creative freedom. There would need to be some things for me to leave the YouTube thing because I'm very happy with where I live. I'm happy with my creative freedom and all of this stuff. But, being able to do this for consistent salary and still having that creative freedom, it's definitely something I would love to do. It's not something I'm really pursuing. If someone came to me and offered it, I would consider it. ESPN's probably the one company where I would probably tell them to just get lost. I don't know, man. So many people leave that company the second they get a better opportunity. I don't like their shows. I don't think they give their analysts creative freedom. I think they tell them what to say, and I would never sell out like that. With all due respect to guys like Stephen A. Smith and some of these other guys on ESPN, with all due respect to them, I have more confidence and respect in my ability as an analyst. So that's my answer. As far as 10 years from now, honestly, I still see this channel just growing. I've thought a lot about, if I got a scouting job offer or an offer from a network, I could see going that route. But as of right now, the plan is to just grow the channel. I could see getting to a point where I hire someone to work with me to increase the amount of content on the channel. So, that's all, having the TFG network would be amazing in 10 years. It would have to continue to grow at a really nice rate, but we're just getting started. All right. From JOR. Assuming current trends continue and the Jets win 0 or 1 game, and get the first pick. In this situation, they'd trade Darnold. I agree. Who at this point would have an all-time low value? Oh, Darnold at this point would have an all-time low value. Obvious candidates to trade for him are Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. I agree. Could you see the Raiders taking a flyer on him? Even if Carr can't... Some typos in here, JOR, but it's all right. We're working through it. Well, you guys get where that's going. Basically, could you see the Raiders trading for him? Yeah. I think Gruden, he showed it with signing Mariota. He seems to be a guy that likes to commit to guys he liked in the draft, and Mike Mayock. And I haven't gone back to see. Let's have some fun here. Let's look at Mike Mayock's 2017 draft board. Big board. Let's see if he had Darnold as QB1. I think that's the right class, right? 2017? I think we got to go ahead of year. Shoot. I need some water, too. Bear with me. 2018. Yep, here we go. All right, quarterback, yep. Sam Darnold was his number 1 quarterback. Josh Allen, number 2. Rosen 3, Baker 4, Lamar 5. Pretty similar to me. I could absolutely see that. You had Darnold as the 6th best player in that class. Yeah, I could see that. I think that's a great call. I want to see it, man. I want to see Baker. I would love not Baker, Darnold. I would love those 3 spots. Would be a dream for Darnold. You are going from freaking the Jets. We talked about overtime rules being the biggest joke in professional sports. The Jets organization's probably second. You go to the Colts with Reich and Ballard. You go to the Steelers. We talked about their culture, or the Raiders, who I question their roster talent, but I like Mayock. I like Gruden. I would love any of those fits. I want to see it more than a lot of things. I think Darnold got dealt a terrible hand, and he's still got a chance. All right. I like that suggestion a lot. I think that'd be fun. I think he's got a much higher upside than Carr. Tyler Avon. Seems the Bears' defense has been very good so far. Top 10 in yards allowed. Top 5 in points allowed again. Yet the majority of the starters, minus Khalil Mack, have had subpar PFF grades. What exactly does this mean? How have they been able to prevent yards and points so well despite grading poorly? Well, you want the easy answer, and that is that defense is just weird and unpredictable. And they have a very sound, deep defense. I think that they know on that side of the ball that they have to be really good to win. I think that is an underrated aspect of defense. When you know that you have to be the best unit on the field every week, it just changes everything. It changes the focal point of the coaching staff. It changes your preparation as a player. It changes your game plan. You will do things like the Bears do. They try to keep the defense fresh. They try to keep the score down. I think that their game plan is very much we want to have a defensive friendly team, and I think that actually helps those defensive numbers look better. I think that's an underrated aspect of defense. All right, I'm gonna try to wrap this thing up. I'm sorry if I go through these last questions a little too quickly, but I do appreciate all of the questions here. If the Bengals, this is from Jacob, if the Bengals, Chargers, Dolphins, or Eagles have the number one pick, what do you see each team doing with that pick? Man, I say I got to wrap things up, and then I get a really tough question. Bengals, trade it. Chargers, trade it. Dolphins, trade it. Eagles won't have the number one pick. Eagles are going to win the NFC East. Okay, from Jake Goodian. Thoughts on Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's performance versus the Bills? I thought the O-line played their best game, at least run blocking. Where does Bell fit in there? We talked about Bell earlier. I think Edwards-Hilaire will be first and second down. Bell will be goal line and third down. It just increases the floor. I think Edwards-Hilaire will come off the field a little bit more, but you're going to take a lot more reps away from the backup to Hilaire than you are from Hilaire himself. Hunt says Zach has lost the locker room with Dunlap and many others calling him out. I did not know that. Started 2 garbage players over him and Atkins, and the veterans are mad. That's quite the story. Yeah, I'm not a huge Zach Taylor guy. I have not been overly impressed by him. I think that defense has really underwhelmed. So, yeah, that really doesn't surprise me. I don't know if Zach Taylor's the answer. I think the Bengals are doing a lot of things to hurt Joe Burrow. Okay, from Matthew Bell. With the Jets destined to land the first overall pick and take Trevor Lawrence, and the Panthers likely picking in the middle of the draft, what do I think about Darnold going to Carolina? Likewise, I love it. I love it from the Panthers' perspective. It gives you a high upside option that can sit behind Teddy Bridgewater, who will teach him how to be more conservative. You get Joe Brady. Hopefully he's still there if he doesn't get a head coaching job. Put Darnold in a good organization. And I've said it a lot of times. I think the Panthers are doing things the right way right now, so I love that. And then Matthew also says, if your team is looking for a new coach, who would you be more excited to land, Eric Bieniemy or Brian Daboll, and why? Also, what team do you think each candidate would be the best fit for? I like Bieniemy to Houston. I think Bieniemy, just that Andy Reid system is really proven. I think Brian Daboll a little more flexible. I like Bieniemy to Houston. I think it's a great fit. He can do a lot of the same things he did with the speed on that offense, with the mobility of Watson. Brian Daboll, I actually like to Detroit, who I think could get a lot of similar things out of that offense as he has gotten out of Buffalo. Okay, from Cody Bliss, with Green Bay clearly showing their lack of talent at the wide receiver position, who are 2 or 3 trade candidates in your mind? Well, I kind of answered that when I was talking about Green Bay. If they could get Julio, hell yeah. AJ Green, as Jake said, or Hunt was saying that the veterans are kind of out in Cincinnati if they get AJ Green. And their opponent this week, if they beat Houston, do they, go talk to the GM while they're in Houston and say, hey, can we bring Kenny Stills back with us on the team plane for a 5th round pick? Okay, sorry for rushing these guys. It's a blizzard outside. I got to go pick my girlfriend up at the hospital. But last question here. Who should the Eagles attack the trade deadline, assuming they go 1-1? The division is still winnable. Do they make a move to bolster their depth? Eagles don't have a ton of flexibility. Offensive line's been a problem, but you don't usually acquire linemen mid-season. I think they ride it out. Hope Rieger, Jeffrey, and Jackson can get healthy at receiver. You hope you get Ertz and Goddard back. Defensively, you could maybe go after a linebacker. That's really it, though. I can't think of a lot of trade solutions for the Eagles off the top of my head. I think you just kind of ride it out. It's such a disaster. I don't think you really jeopardize the future right now. So I'm sorry if that's an underwhelming answer. Maybe you can think of a linebacker, but I can't think of any linebackers on the block right now. So that's a tough question to answer. But that's going to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It was a fun podcast. We'll see you on Patreon for the picks tomorrow. And we'll have studs and duds as well on Friday. So peace out, everyone. Rate and review the podcast. Like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers. We'll see you later. Peace out.